Welcome to another episode of the Career Keynotes podcast with Tincup and Gardiner, where William and Andrew chop it up with respected Silicon Valley talent acquisition and HR leaders to get the real story behind their career journeys, along with an insider's view of how companies engage with candidates. Let's face it, these days, finding the job, much less nailing down an interview, is not easy. This is a rare opportunity to learn firsthand what companies are looking for in a candidate and the best ways to engage with them. And now, here are William and Andrew.
Okay, welcome back, everybody, viewers and listeners. It's good to see you. Pretty excited about today's episode. Hi, William. Hi, producer Bev. I'm pretty excited about today's episode because I've known our guest for a long time, and he's one of the few people that I know that kind of grew up and kind of eats his own dog food and started at the bottom and worked his way up. So can speak very intelligently, incredibly about his journey to the top of talent acquisition and what that looks like and feels like from the inside out. And as you know, that's kind of the mission of the show, is to give you an insider's view of what it's like to be a recruiter or a head of TA and be responsible for the hiring decisions. So and I'm just going to say before I'm at my folks' house, so if the phone rings, I'm going to mute myself really quick. So sorry about that. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome you, Michael Watson, to the show.
Andrew, thank you. It's feel humbled. You make me feel very welcome. I'm excited to be here, and I can't believe you consider me a leader in TA, but I'll take it, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
You're welcome. And I say that, it's like, and I think producer Bev, you can relate with this. When you go to Target or any major retail outlet, the manager, Safeway, they never says manager on the thing, because they know if it says manager, you're the leader, then it all stops you. So the smart ones always are, oh no, I'm not in charge. Producer Bev's in charge. And I think that's part of your charm. You've always been very humble. And I like that. And that's, again, energetically part of the show. We want to talk to people that are credible, that don't tell you how smart they are. They kind of let you figure it out. And I think that's you. So Mike, for the audience that maybe they looked you up on LinkedIn, maybe they haven't, who knows? Could you just give us 2 minutes at a high level of who Mike Watson is and what you're all about?
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm currently what we call a talent transformation advisor. I lead the team here at Eightfold. And prior to joining Eightfold, which is a software company, the first 22 years of my career were all on the talent acquisition side, right? The first 12 years was on the agency side. I got hired with Aerotech right out of school, worked my way up there, spent some time with Robert Half, started a company, right? And then I moved over to the corporate America side as a sourcer, moved up as a recruiter, moved up as director of the Americas. Then I took on global roles. So when I tell people I've seen every stage of the TA process, and not only that, Andrew, but when I started, I'm going to age myself here. We were using milk crates and file cabinets, right? We had 2 desks over here that were just phone books for all the towns in the Bay Area, right? Because we had all these resumes. And if the number wasn't right on there, I'd be like, oh, William Tincup, he lives in Mountain View. Let me get the Mountain View phone book and let me find his number. So
if you mention dot matrix printers, you're going to really make me feel old. Please don't mention.
You remember recruiting for some token ring technology, folks. So I don't know what that does.
This goes back to, I actually explained to somebody the other day the concept of a fax blast. And they're like, fax? What is a fax? But I'm like, you know what? We're just going to skip over that. We're just going to go to the next thing because it wasn't that successful anyhow.
You also had a full head of hair, Mike. I think
I did at one point, Andrew. Yeah, and this light above me is not helping. It's I got this like I'm like, it's my halo.
No, it's a halo. It is a halo. It's good. It works. So let me
keep going. Robert Half, then I mean, you don't have to name drop.
So Robert Half, then I switched over to Polycom, where I worked for a woman named Ashley Goldsmith for a few years. Left on good terms. Now here's the first token. Don't burn bridges. Left on good terms with Ashley. went to HGST, Western Digital. We were bought, right? A year and a half later, I'm looking for a gig because they're merger and acquisition. And now Ashley is the chief human resource officer at Workday, right? And they are just taking off. So I'm like, hey, right? I grew up in Pleasanton. Workday is in Pleasanton. Hey, Ashley. Mike, I don't have a leadership position. You can come in and recruit for us in a principal, right? To kind of take a lead that way. Perfect. Spent 3 years there. Left right after these tremendous lessons learned, right? We went from 1,500 people to 8,000 people in 3 years while maintaining the best place to work in the Bay Area, right? So a high bar, high volume. So then I took those lessons learned, went to Rambus, spent some time there, went to Gigamon, small cybersecurity company, where I implemented Eightfold, and I was such a believer in it that Eightfold had an opening, and I went over there and joined them. So that's how I got here.
So let me ask career zigzag questions.
Yeah.
Decisions, and again, without names, where you've made a decision, it could be on a project too, by the way, where you've made a decision that you thought you were skeptical, and then it played out really, really well for you. And in the opposite, maybe a decision, a career decision that you thought, oh, this is a slam dunk. This is easy. This is just going to be a fantastic project or whatever gig. And then you had to rip the Band-Aid off very, very quickly because it just didn't play out the way you thought it would.
Yeah. So I'll be honest with you.
Take us into either of those.
Yeah. So I think, right, that some of the moves that I wish I could go back and redo, I think were moves where I made them for money and title, to be honest with you. I've always had great relationships every place I worked, but I was ambitious. And now look, I've moved up by 3 years here, 2.5 years here, 3 years here. And I'm not saying that's the right path for everyone. My father worked in one company for almost 50 years, right? And every time I'd switch, he'd be like, what the hell are you doing, boy? Right? I'd be like, I got this, Dad. It's a little different, right? But it's, you know, whatever you choose to do, you gotta go all in with it, right? So the way I kind of attacked this was, you know, first of all, my parents were military. My mom's a Marine. So I had 18 years of boot camp growing up, I tell folks, right? But I took those lessons of hard work, of stacking 4 cords of firewood every winter, right? Of all these things that it's almost like the Karate Kid, right? Paint the fence, wax the car, do this, right? And now I'm in a TA role, and in all these lessons that my parents taught me are coming back and help me, right? So I think if I look back at the bad decisions, they're based on money and title. And now if I focus on what I'm doing now, I made a career change. Right? Think about this. I made a career change after 22 years, 2 months before COVID hit and a global depression hit. So I can assure you, mid-April of last year, I was questioning, like, oh my God, did I make the right move? Right? But it has worked out, right? Because once again, I lean in with what I'm doing. I align myself with great people, right? And that's another little tip I'll talk on later. And then I give them all I got. You pay me $1, I'm going to give you $1.10 worth of work.
Very nice. You know, you just covered a lot of ground. I'd like to go back to something you said earlier, because I'd forgotten that your roots are at Aerotech and Robert Half, and that's they've turned out a lot of talent acquisition practitioners and leaders, frankly. But yeah, could you at a really high level walk us through if you want to, just as a framework, compare and contrast the difference between a sourcer and a recruiter and what that means to you?
Yeah, it means something a little bit different everywhere, right? Where you get larger corporations, the sourcing function really is almost a research arm, right? So very little interaction with candidates, list generation, flipping websites, x-raying things, right? Just finding those people that frankly have kind of checked out. I don't want to be bothered with junior recruiters. I got a hot skill set. I'm good. So in that regard, it's been fantastic, Andrew, right? It's that really helps. Does that answer your question?
On a sourcer, but what about recruiter? So what does a sourcer do that a recruiter doesn't do? And what does a recruiter do that a sourcer doesn't do?
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line?
So what I did, and I'll go back to a company where we hyperscaled at. We had one recruiter, one sourcer partner, and we called them pods, right? So if you think about recruiting as a house, I had a front door and I had a back door. The sourcer was bringing them in the front door. That sourcer had the permission that we were combined. So the sourcer was in my intake meetings with the manager. They knew what was going on. So that sourcer went out, found people, got them up to the hiring manager. Right? Our hiring manager is upstairs. We're downstairs, right? Comes back and says, hey, this person's great. I want to bring them in for an interview. They transitioned that to me as the recruiter. And I finished taking that candidate through the process, the negotiation, the giving notice, and it allowed my sourcer to go back out and immediately start bringing people in that front door. Right? Because what happens in traditional recruiting, when you don't have that sourcer in place, recruiter goes out and finds people. Now I get them in the process. For the most part, I got 2/3 of my people either in interviews or final. I got a third in sourcing. The sourcing, it shuts off like a spigot. Right? It literally, I turn it off. Right? And then I get my offers out, I get my interviews, then I go back over here and I turn it back on and I start sourcing again. Right? To have that 1-to-1 ratio is expensive. Right? So, and this is some of the ways I ended up at Eightfold was I said, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? There's got to be some things that we can automate and take some of these things away to allow us to do more meaningful work.
I love that. So I'm going to use a sports metaphor question. You've hired thousands of people in your 20+ year career. I want a hiring touchdown story and a hiring interception story. So where you threw a touchdown and you hired somebody that just off the charts was fantastic, and where you hired someone, and again, no specifics, we don't need to know names of companies or individuals, or where you hired somebody and it just did not work out.
So
and what did you learn?
Yeah. So old Mike,
we've all made bad hires.
Yeah, remember, we've only got so much time there, William.
Yeah, no, I'll make it quick. Old Mike and the old Mike in the interview process, right? We would have been talking, right? That small talk. Oh, you're an Iron fan. I'm an Iron fan. Hire him, right? Could he do the job? Who knows? Right. So now mature Mike is gotten beyond that to say, hey, look, we can have similarities. We can have these common traits, but I still have to figure out if you can do the job, right? That goes into with being a great fit. But early on, I would hire people because we like the A's, we didn't like the Giants, we like the Niners, but we don't like the Raiders. I'm like, I hire this person, right? And that those folks didn't work out because all of a sudden they're like, oh, Mike, I can't do the job, and I don't want to do the job. And so, right, for me, where I've had my successes, it's really where I put a process in place where I make it about the skills. I get away from these 32 bullet point job descriptions, right? I try to write meaningful job descriptions where it entices somebody. They see it, and all of a sudden they start imagining themselves in this role and doing this types of work. That's how I kind of take it. So I don't want to talk about individual hires that might have worked or might not have worked, because I'll be honest with you, every single hire that didn't work, it was most likely my fault. I didn't enable them. I'm a believer in that, right? I'm a believer in servant leadership. If you fail, it's because I didn't enable you to succeed, right? And that's part of just extreme ownership that all of us show here at Eightfold. It's like we have to own everything we do. If you're not successful and you're my employee, it's not your fault. It's my fault.
Wow, that's very noble. So, Mike, talent acquisition, from my perspective, and I've, like you've spent the bulk of my professional career in or around how companies hire people and how can they do it more efficiently and smarter and better. Let's say I want to get in. I mean, what are some things that you would? I think it's a really first of all, I think it's a really hard job, and the ones that are really good at it tend to rise to the top, not unlike you. And I get the whole hard work, and you touched on some really good points. Never burn bridges. Always give 100. Now you want 100%. Here's 120. That will never go unrewarded. So that's very good guidance. But what are some things that you would caution someone that was interested in becoming a talent acquisition leader or taking a more significant role in talent acquisition within a company, whether it was going from a manager to a director or a director to a VP? What are some things you would encourage them to do, and what are some things you would caution them against?
So for that HR professional kind of looking to take that next step, Andrew, or is this for someone just applying to jobs off the street and how do I get in?
We're still focused on TA people and
Perfect.
your experience with TA, and with the caveat that it's not easy.
Yep.
It's a lot harder. And if you think it's easy, you're mistaken. It's a lot harder than you think it is. And most people realize how hard it is. So I guess it's really just feedback for people that want to pursue. As you said something earlier is very, very relevant. It's like the dough. Oh my God, you can make a ton of dough. You're an executive search or recruit. I mean, you make someone, well, yeah, you can, but I mean, are you in it for the money? Because if you're in it for the money, then you're gonna, it comes at an expense. So anyways, that's more for the people that want to elevate their talent acquisition career.
Yeah. So I'll give a message out to the folks that are on the agency world trying to move over to the corporate world. That same determination, that same customer service you use there is what I've used over here on the corporate side to be successful. I've always treated, right? It doesn't matter that I have a badge that matches everyone else's badge here. These are my customers. And if I don't perform for my customers and produce for my customers, they're going to call an agency. They're going to, right, escalate to somebody else, right? And so I took that mentality from the agency world of, oh gosh, I never want to lose a customer. I want to do whatever I can to fill these positions for them. And I took that mentality and I brought it in-house. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't see that type of mentality in-house. I saw a lot of fat cats, right? They were sitting back, they were posting jobs, they were waiting for people to apply. They were telling managers, hey, I got it posted and no one applied. What do we do? Right? And I'm like, oh God, I would kill, like, in the agency, like we didn't eat if we didn't fill positions and find them, right? So I took that and I coupled it inside. So, you know, where some areas where I fell down and I've really kind of had to double down, data analytics and reporting.
Oh, interesting.
If I could go back and become an Excel expert and learn pivot tables, it's too late for me, I think.
No, it's never too late.
But that is something that will serve me very well right now.
There's a Khan Academy class waiting for you right now. Hey, Mike, you mentioned team earlier, and the question that comes to mind for me is, through your career, what types of people, skills, and otherwise thrive around you as team members for you?
Yeah, I'm an energy monster. And I feed off energy, right? So I have to align myself with folks that have that type of energy. I can't stand misery loves company. I just can't. Go do it somewhere else, right? I've had too many real life tragedies in my life to sweat small stuffs at work, and I realize that a lot of people haven't experienced some of those things, and I don't wish them on anyone. But when you lose people that are close to you and you see people go through things, paralysis at 15, can never walk again, you put things in perspective, right? So I think just having the perspective helps, William.
All right. Now listen, you're probably one of the better suited people. We're going to pivot now. We're going to focus on the candidate side of the house. So you've done a really good job of weaving some of that stuff into your answers as it relates to TA. But so what do you tell somebody? We talk a lot on the show, Mike, about, hey, you're right. I'm like, I always tell people, all of us are career coaches of one sort or another. Hey, my sister-in-law's cat's father's brother is looking to change. Could you talk to them for 10 minutes, or would you look at their LinkedIn? So we all do that. One of the first things I always say is, it's okay that you're not good at getting a job. It's not something you want to be good at. You know, you just want to, it's like being good at dating. You just want a girlfriend or a wife. So But one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is they are sitting in front of their computer and they've done an amazing job. They've gotten so much guidance and feedback on their resume and the font and the point size, and their LinkedIn profiles relatively good, and they just start posting to jobs. They start posting to jobs, and then they sit there and wait, and nothing comes back. Maybe they get that, "Hey, Mike, thanks so much for applying. You know what? You are amazing. However, at the current time, you're just not a significant match for any of the roles that we have open." The good news is we're going to keep your information on file in the event that something more appropriate comes up that's a better fit for you. And thanks so much for applying. And then they get discouraged. They make it about them. And one of the biggest frustrations I have is when I'm trying to help people, and I think all of us do a good job of that. That's the purpose of the show, frankly. One of the primary purposes is not learning how to advocate for myself. Because see, I don't know that there's a Mike Watson on the other end of the computer, on the other end of the phone, or on the other end of the equation that's equally frustrated and equally invested in trying to hire me or find me. I think you looked at me and you saw me and you said, no, Andrew's too old or too short or too fat or too smart or too dumb or too something. And I get discouraged and I give up. So that's a big, long-winded question.
What do we tell folks like that?
Practical, no, but what are some good practical words of not so much encouragement, but guidance, actionable?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you real life. Here comes the concrete. Here comes
we go.
Fastball.
Strap in, people.
Here goes a fastball, Andrew. I'm throwing you a fastball. Gear up. I tell people this all the time. When you apply blindly to a job, your odds are 1 in 200. When you go through an employee referral, your odds are 1 in 10. Okay, so stop blindly applying to everything, right? That's like, if there's any hunters that are out there listening to this that hunt with shotguns, that's like not patterning your shotgun and wondering why you're not hitting anything, right? I have to be able to figure out what I'm targeting, right? And so when you do that, all of a sudden it becomes clear.
Okay. What else you got? That was a good one. I mean,
right,
we get networking and referrals.
So I tell people it's all sit. So the odds are 1 in 10, right, for employee referral. So make a list of target companies you're interested in working for, right? Find the ones that they fill that philanthropic need, right? And the work's the same everywhere. Who's doing things differently that speak to your heart? Is it someone that has some philanthropic drives? Is it someone that like us, where we're trying to, right, really on a mission to improve people's lives around the world, or whatever it is? Make that list of companies and then start looking at your network. Who do you know, right? If I have some second level connections, maybe I went to Fresno State, maybe in my list of companies, target companies, there's some folks there that are alumni. I don't know them, but I reach out to them and I say, hey, fellow Bulldog, just want to introduce myself. You know, you work for a company that I'd love to work for. Right. And I just wanted to introduce myself to you, see if you had any pointers, because listen, all of these companies have employee referral bonuses, right? So if you get to know these people and you reach out in a genuine way, right? Hey, we got this connection. We're both Lambda Chi Alphas. We both went to Fresno State. We both started our careers at Aerotech. Leverage that information and build those relationships. So all of a sudden it's an employee referral from them. And now your odds are 1 in 10. I'm telling you, as a TA person, I love employee referrals.
I love it. That's probably the most, we've heard that. I mean, candidly, we've heard that before. A lot of people say, get referred in. It's always easier. It's always better. But the way you framed it made it, because what happens is people just can't, it's almost, it's what you said. It's like, you make it sound so simple and so easy, but Frank, it's all about action. It's really just doing it. What if they don't like me? What if they don't respond? I mean, so it's all about action.
I had a couple recruiters reach out to me right when COVID started, right? And they said, Mike, buddy, it's hard, right? There's a million recruiters out there. I looked at their resume and I said, man, why are you not highlighting that you're an expert in AI in the recruiting field? Go back and rewrite it. And then what we're going to do is, I know the companies that are using AI in their recruiting stacks. We're going to individually reach out to them and say, hey, I'm an expert in what you're doing, and I just wanted to reach out and let you know I'm available. Now, but it's a more targeted way. Once again, it's my shotgun. I'm very, very tight with where I'm going, with my approach, with my patterns. It's not just chucking mud against the wall and see if it's going to fit, right? My dad used to say this to me all the time, Andrew, finding a job is a full-time job, right? And when I was younger, I was like, what does that
Finding
mean?
a job is a job.
Right? Now, this was back in the day when you had to pound the pavement, right? So it really did take you 8 hours a day to go out, right? Now, some folks think, I just spent 20 minutes sending out resumes, I'm good.
So, Mike, I want to ask you, and you brought up your parents a couple times. I was having a conversation earlier today, and it was an inclusion discussion with a diversity leader, and the topic got over to veterans. Mm-hmm. And she was thinking about inclusion and how to include veterans. So I want to kind of get your take, both kind of living in a military household, and I know it's probably a passion for you, but how do we do it? Like, if we think of inclusion, we think of beginner, intermediate, and advanced concepts of how do we hire veterans. How do you explain that to people? How do you kind of go about, the process of, okay, if you're not doing it, okay, here's how you start. If you are doing it, but you want to do it better, okay, here's how you do that. Like, how do we cross over and do a better job hiring veterans?
I think it's like everything. You have to make it intentional, right? So when I was at Gigamon running TA for them, I increased female hiring, I increased Black African-American hiring, I increased Latino hiring, and veteran hiring, all multiple increases in 1 year, because it was intentional. We're going to load these groups up in the front of the funnel, right? Now you can have something, well, we don't have enough folks to load up in the front of the funnel. That's a separate discussion, right? We can help you, like Andrew and those guys. We're doing amazing work out there at Travis Air Force Base with veterans there, right? So I think that's one. I think the other thing is really understanding, if a service member says, hey, I was a minesweeper, us in corporate America, we have to realize that there's so much more than just minesweeping. There's leadership abilities, there's delegation, there's working under pressure, right? There's time sensitivity. There's so many things that go into that translate over to what we're doing, right? Not just like, hey, well, he's a metal detector and right, we found some mines, or he was reading a screen off a computer. It's so much more than that, right? So I think it first starts with understanding on our side. We have to be more understanding of what these folks are doing, what their roles entail of, and then translating that to skills that we do understand in the corporate world.
Wow. You do have I wouldn't call you an energy monster. I'd call you an energy wizard. But your answers are good. And I just want to highlight or underscore a few of them. One is, if, audience members, and again, we got to come up with a better name. But what Mike's saying is, if you're a diverse person, whether it's ethnicity or gender or veteran, that really elevates you. I mean, they're really looking for you. So that's an advantage. It's not a disadvantage, number one. Right. The other thing you said that's super important is have a direction, have a goal. It's better to aim high and miss than shoot low and hit. But by God, have a sight on your rifle or your shotgun in Mike's case, because if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. And if you keep headed where you are going, you are going to get there. So having a direction, even if you're not sure, I mean, it's okay to make a mistake. It's one of the things I really like about you, Mike. You're very transparent about, hey, I don't know. I don't have it all figured out. But everything I know, I learned. And it's that old adage about, where good judgment comes from. It comes from experience, which comes from bad judgment. Okay. So, producer Bev, you've been very quiet. I'd love to hear from you. What do you have for Michael?
Well, I just wanted to kind of go back a couple topics. You mentioned servant leadership, and I love that. It sounds kind of like modern talk for stuff, but it also sounds like a really old philosophy. Like that's how it kind of always used to be, and how you strive to make it. So I just wanted you to spend another minute kind of blowing that up.
Yeah, so once again, I'll go back to the sports analogy. There used to be an old famous basketball coach, John Wooden, coached UCLA to all those championships. Every night he'd be in the gym sweeping the floors himself. So what type of culture and what type of environment are you trying to set? Are you trying to set the kind where the boss goes home every day and doesn't work hard and doesn't set the example for all the people watching and looking up to him? To me, that's not what leadership is, right? To me, leadership is they see how hard you're working and they don't want to let you down, so they're going to work just as hard as you, right? Because you're all in it together. It's like if we're in a lifeboat together, Bev, and we are all rowing and you're just kind of laying back suntan and you're like, hey, you guys are doing great, right? We got to be all on the same page. We all got to be rowing in the same direction. So when I talk about servant leadership, I don't see myself as that leader that sits back and catching a tan and be like, hey, William, can you paddle a little harder, buddy? I'm just getting a little hot up here. I need more of a breeze. No, it's like, I'm going to row harder. And then William's going to see me rowing harder. And he's like, you know what? Man, Mike's pulling it. He's going hard for me. Now I'm in it for him. Right. That's servant leadership. When my job, and look, so much in HR is changing, right? The old adage of I'm going to manage your career, Bev, is almost dead, right? The transformation has moved to, Bev, you're in charge of your own career, right? I'm managing a team. I'm managing a function. We got to get stuff done. But Bev, you got to manage your career. You got to tell me if there's things you want. You got to tell me if there's something more. You got to tell me. Right. And that's where legacy systems just don't do a very good job of tracking all that. We usually find out when someone's given their notice, hey, Mike, I just didn't see a lot of opportunity here. I'm moving on.
Good feedback. All right. Bev, that was a good call out. Hey, so Mike, we've talked a lot about what to do. Anything kind of come to mind really in a meaningful way about what shouldn't I do? If I'm a candidate, what should I absolutely? I mean, you talked about indiscriminately posting and praying. That's a no-no. And that is a no-no, by the way. There's a lot of systems and mechanisms in place where if they see you posting your resume or applying for more than one or two roles at the same company, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. But what are some commonsensical, tactical mistakes that you see candidates doing or mistakes that they're making that you would encourage them not to do that would help them elevate their game?
Yeah, I think I'll go right. I just got done hiring a few people, so I went through lots of interviews. Now this is me personal. Right?
That's right.
When the sourcer or the recruiter reaches out to you and they want to have that conversation with you about compensation, have it. I, as the hiring manager, am not the right person to have it with in that initial conversation. And if you think it's the right place in that initial conversation where we're just trying to feel it out, right? To start lecturing me on my titles, what it pays, that's way too low. Go work for my competition, please. Go fast. I don't want you. Here's what I want. Mike, I could care less what my title is, as long as you're paying me a wage that I can write, that it's fair to my value. I can keep the house on. I'm not asking you to like pay me less or I'm not asking you also to make me a millionaire in salary, right? Pay me a fair wage. I could care less what you call me and point me in the direction that I got to go. If that's the case, I'll find something for you.
I love it. Give them the tools and resources and let them go.
I can't train the attitude. I can't train the energy. I can't, guys. I've tried. This happened.
I used to tell people, well, I'd hire for passion, ambition, and intelligence. All the other stuff I can make up for. I can figure it out with them. So the question I have is two-pronged. What's your favorite onboarding tactic when you bring in a new person, and what's your favorite interview tactic?
So I'm learning.
Tactic can be a question.
So my favorite. So let me start with the interview question.
Go ahead.
My favorite interview question, really, especially with people with some tenure. How have you gotten your last few jobs?
Interesting.
If it's not through, if the answer is not through employee referral, or I was referred, or I was brought by an old boss I worked with here, brought me here. I think
that tells you something.
I think the last 4 jobs I got were all referral. Hey, talk to Mike, reach out to Mike. if you are established in your career and you don't have that yet, every single time you got to go and post, there is something going on there. Either you haven't fostered the relationships necessary, right? You're the devil to work with, right? But there's something going on there, right? It's a fascinating question I love to ask, and it tells me everything in one question.
Yeah.
What was the other part of your question, William?
What's your onboarding when you bring in a new team member?
Oh gosh, I'm still trying
when
to
you bring in a new
figure
team member.
I'm trying to figure this out in a COVID world, right? I mean, it's different, right? Sending them items, sending them like a welcome kit, handwritten messages, right? I think helps. What else am I doing right now? That's about it. I'm constantly jumping on calls with my folks. They're all around the country, so I'm up at 5:30, 6 in the morning on Pacific time to meet with them. But I think I'm still trying to figure that out, William. I would love to hear from this group what people are doing, right? Because
I'll tell you,
tough.
Only because I've had this conversation recently with a coaching company called Pilot yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, because they reversed the question on me. They said, what can we do to make things special? I said, listen, I get stuff from vendors every day. I get books, I get T-shirts, I could fill a landfill with all the water bottles I've got from vendors. I did, and it was eaten. But the things that mean the most to me is when someone goes through like my Instagram account and finds out that I love liquor and cigars. Mm-hmm. So they've done enough homework to then say, I know that he loves, scotch, and I know he loves cigars, and they send me a cigar. Like that means more than anything else.
Yeah, the personal touch, right? Not just like, hey, everyone gets a vest, everyone gets a backpack, but like
that's right.
Like, man, it's
highly personal.
That's right.
I would rather have one little tiny thing that's highly personalized than a basket of stuff that's been sent to everybody.
Yeah, the ties that tie, or the ties.
So that's how.
That's a great point,
Andrew?
And I think it goes back to something you alluded to earlier, Mike, about having a direction, having a purpose, and part of that means doing your homework, having your story. So I forget I forget what show it was, you guys, but the person was, have your story, and it's your story, and so be loud and be proud. It may not be, it is what it is. In other words, just be authentic and and own it and have a story around it. Okay, we're kind of at that part of the show where we're winding down. One more kind of sneaky question. Yeah. I just love your answer, Michael, because I know you'll go outside the guardrails. The best job to apply for is the one that doesn't exist, because there's no competition. So kind of go outside, go around, do a Hail Mary or an end around or the Statue of Liberty play. So I'm going to bypass the ATS, do a bunch of homework, find out who the hiring manager is, and skip the recruiter and the sourcer altogether, and do what William said and find out, hey, Mike's the head of this, and Mike likes the 49ers, obviously. So I'm going to send Mike, my Sports Illustrated cover of The Catch or whatever I'm going to do. Yeah. What are your thoughts about, and then let me frame that with, and we're at the part of the show where you can just impart 1, 2, 3 at the most things to a job seeker that's new to the job market, or someone considering changing careers post-COVID, mind you. What are like, if nothing else, know this or don't do that. And I kind of framed it with the end around thing. What would you leave us with?
Yeah, so I would say do your homework before you walk in and you meet with somebody. Know what the company does. Know what their stock ticker is doing today. Know their latest news. Know about them. Show an interest in them. Right? Ask meaningful questions. So many times the decision comes down to hire somebody based on the questions they ask. Right? And we give candidates that opportunity all the time. You have any questions for us? Oh, no, I'm good. Yeah. I mean, you might as well just not even come in. Right. I mean, once again, it's so I think by doing that, trying to make sure I remember there's a few things packed in there, Andrew. What
I
else?
think, doing your homework's important. Owning your story obviously is very critical. I think another mistake that I see people making is, sometimes no is God's ultimate protection. I think making sure that you're applying for the right job, not just energetically, but philosophically, making sure that what you're trying to do, you're not doing it for the money. And I liked what you said earlier. It's an odds, right? If it's 1 in 200, okay. If it's 1 in 10, okay. But if I want 20 opportunities, then I'm exponentially, and as a recruiter and former sourcer, all that, it's an odds, it's a numbers game, and few people are equipped to kind of create that, go that extra mile. That's why, as producer Bev always loves to say, there's never any traffic on the highway.
So Andrew, I'll leave everyone with this. We as a society, we've come so conditioned with just sending the email and that's it. Whether it's recruiting, whether it's follow-ups, whether it's thank yous, like you said, Wayne, whether it's onboarding, right? It's how you follow up and how you kind of leave that is everything. And I know this is a trick when I used to sell staffing. I had this candidate sitting with a manager for a while, right? And all of a sudden he wouldn't take my calls, wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that. I happened to be reading a series of books by a gentleman named Jeffrey Gitomer. Right, sales books, the Little Red Sales Bible, right? Somewhere in
Genius.
there he says, hey, right, if you got a customer that's not like getting back to you, you send them a FedEx. Everyone opens a FedEx, right? You send it to their office because they either think they're being served with divorce papers or they won the lotto or there's something important, so they're going to open it, right? He's like, you find a little action figure, you glue it to a little kid's white picket fence, and you put a note in there and you say, Mr. or Mrs. Manager, it's National Get Off the Fence Week, and I was hoping to get your feedback this week.
Wow.
And so I went, honestly, I was crazy. I still am probably. I sent it to him. Well, I mean, what did I have to lose, right?
Wow.
He responds back to me, laughing his ass off, and he says, Watson, have the person start on Monday.
Nice.
What do you have to lose? Right?
No, I wish we had more time because this guy wasn't getting back to me, and he said, I don't have enough time. I don't have any time. In fact, his admin was saying, oh no, Mr. Sogard's too busy, Andrew. He doesn't have any time. He doesn't have enough time. He's too busy. And I FedExed him the spice.
I mean, think about this. You're a candidate.
No, and he never responded though. It never
think
worked.
About this. You're the candidate. Maybe you're a recruiter. You're trying to find that next recruiting gig. Send a FedEx to the recruiting manager and say, look, if I can get to you, there's not a candidate I can't get to.
Dude, that's genius. Audience, that's a goal. Load up on FedExes. Okay,
FedEx
so we
stock to shoot up, right?
We are out of time, but Mike, we do have this clickbait gimmick where we want to know, you've seen and heard more stuff with your background in HR and TA than most people will ever see in 100 lifetimes. So do you have kind of a funny, awkward moment? Could have been you, maybe you were the candidate, maybe you were the recruiter, but give us kind of a weird, awkward HR story so we leave on a positive note.
I'm going to go back to when I was with Aerotech. I had just been promoted to sales. So, right, I'm a year out of college. I just recruited for a year. They said, Mike, you're doing great. Let's put you down to sales. I was with this new sales manager. The guy had a reputation of being tough, right? So we go in and I meet with the customer and he's with me and I just regurgitate everything. Here's this. Right? We walk out, we get in the car. He pulls up to the front. He says, Mike, I want you to go back in there, go to the receptionist, tell her you left something in that gentleman's office. Go back in there and tell that gentleman you need your business card back. Make up whatever excuse you need to. Tell him it's your last one. You need it as a template. I don't care what you do, Mike. Don't come back to this car until you have your business card. Okay. Okay. So walk in, I get to the manager, right? The door's open. William, hey, Mike. Hey, I hate to bother you, but I just realized that's the last business card I had and I need that to make new templates. Can I get that back from you? He reaches down into the garbage can and he hands it to me.
Dude.
And I walk out and I get in the door and my boss says, it was in the garbage can, wasn't it?
Oh, dude, what a great story.
And I was like, yeah, how'd you know? He's like, because you don't know how to read people worth of shit. So he's like, if you're going to be good in this job, you better figure it out. And going in there and regurgitating and doing all this stuff, that is not the approach, Mike. And I said, all right, you got it. You show me how to do it, and I'll do it.
What a great story.
How you like that one?
That was a good one.
I think that might be
Genius.
That's gonna go. That's gonna go. That's gonna be one of the
I don't recommend
ones.
people do this to their employees. It scarred me. Please don't.
Good for you. No, but that's good. You know, and I think we've all been there. We have as you may or may not know, Bev worked in retail for, I don't want to say because I don't want to date her, but we all have this belief, Mike, that everyone should spend some time working at a McDonald's or at something just so you
Big
can
box. Any kind of big
Sorry?
box.
Exactly, box.
Any kind of big box.
But just so you can have a little humble pie, because I think we've all been there, and ideally we will all be there, and then we will elevate and advance. Okay, Mike, I can't thank you enough for carving out the time to be with us today. Thank you so much. And Mike, if people want to get in touch with you, and I'm sure, gosh, we might have to build a new internet after this episode. So how do people get in touch with you, Mike?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Michael Watson. You can email me. My email is mwatson@eightfold.ai, and that's just spelled out EIGHTFOLD.ai. Beautiful.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. You killed it. And
thank you, folks.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
See you next time.
Mike.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching this episode of Career Keynotes. For more killer content, please like and subscribe to our channel. We welcome all comments and questions and are grateful for any input regarding future content, topics, and guests. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.